Thank you very much for the introduction. Nijat and I are really happy to present the results of a case study today that we have conducted for the SMR Congress in New Orleans last year. We will share with you what we learned about millennials from a mobile-based study that we conducted in the context of the telecom industry. With this case study, we aim to help you better understand what drives millennials to stay with or switch to a competing telecom provider, and how different communication styles can influence this. In addition, we will share with you two different research approaches that are a better fit with millennials' communication and interaction behavior than traditional desktop surveys. First, we're going to explain why it's actually relevant to have a look at the generation of millennials. Secondly, we will focus on the innovative methodologies that we have used in our case study. Then, of course, we will share the results of our study with you. And last but not least, we will wrap this session up by putting our results into context and explaining which conclusions marketing and market research professionals can draw from it. Well, articles and research about millennials is common talk nowadays. We all hear it and read it everywhere. But why is it actually relevant for marketing professionals, but also market research professionals to look at the generation of millennials? According to the US Census Bureau, millennials surpassed baby boomers as the nation's largest living generation last year. In line with this, millennials are growing up and moving into their prime spending years. It is expected that this generation of young people, and then I mean people between 70 and 34 years old, will collectively spend more than $200 billion annually starting this year. So it is becoming more and more vital for brands to reconsider their offerings and to think about how to communicate with this major, decisive group. Nijat and I belong to the generation of millennials ourselves. We have grown up in a time of immense technological change and advancement. We are inseparable from our devices like a smartphone or a tablet. We're constantly moving from screen to screen, multitasking to maintain our constant connection to friends and work. Well, and it's also, I guess, not a secret that we're really open to e-commerce. And as we belong to this generation, we also know, well, how it may be hard for brands to catch our attention. But actually, it's not only a challenge for brands to get the attention of millennials. Also, for us market researchers, we really need to ask ourselves if we can reach this young generation with our traditional research approaches. As just mentioned, it is in the nature of millennials to constantly swipe left and right on the mobile devices. Additionally, we live in a world of information overload. To be heard, the information needs to really stand out. But it is also easy to get distracted and to switch to different information quickly. So there is no time anymore for a long, boring desktop survey. In addition, millennials have the tendency to search for instant gratification, which requires methodologies, ads, information, anything to be fun and to ensure high engagement.
We use the telecom industry as the context for our case study, as the telecom industry is the one we rely on most to keep us connected. This industry is currently under a lot of pressure as customers constantly demand more data, more minutes, and more benefits for a lower price. There is a continuous push for innovations, and the industry itself is morphing with non-traditional telecom companies entering the competitive landscape. For example, you can see Google offering calls with Google Voice, and recently WhatsApp and Facebook, which were with no means considered telecom companies, started to offer video calls as well. So in our study, we tested the following two hypotheses. First, when selecting telecom providers, millennials prioritize connectedness over other benefits. And our second hypothesis was, millennials are more likely to react to market disruptors. Well, let's now talk more about the project itself. This project is quite special for us, as we conducted it especially to share it at SMR Congress last year in New Orleans. It was a global effort. Over a period of 4 months, we worked in 3 different locations around the globe. Coordinating work from Atlanta, Rotterdam, and London was quite challenging, but also very beneficial, because we were able to work around the clock and pick up the work that our teammates have done earlier in their days. This showcases another millennial characteristic, that we are so globally interconnected that it comes naturally to work with different time zones. As an additional layer, we decided to be disruptors ourselves by using innovative survey methods. And the first survey method, that innovative methodology, like which one we used, is we redefined the traditional MaxDiff methodology, which is a well-established and effective quantitative methodology, and we know that it can become quite repetitive and difficult to implement on a mobile device. So since we wanted to run our study completely mobile-based, we developed a refurbished version of MaxDiff by modifying the user experience of it, swiping MaxDiff, or as we started calling it, SwipeDiff. Similar to the conventional MaxDiff, respondents were shown a couple of items per screen and were asked to select the one that is most and least important for them. But instead of selecting it, respondents could just easily swipe the least important one to the left and the most important one to the right. So this made it a fun, engaging, and fast exercise while still having the robustness of results like for the conventional traditional MaxDiff.
In addition to the SwipeDiff that Nijat just told you about, we also used another innovative methodology, which is called Unspoken. Again, this is like a methodology and an exercise that's completely mobile-based. Unspoken is able to bridge the rational and emotional drivers of people's decision. So people are both rational and emotional while deciding, and there's a rational truth behind the decision, but there's also an emotional truth behind the decision. We as market researchers are strong in the rational truths, and we're also developing and providing the emotional truths. But we feel the real challenge for the industry and for the market research profession is to bridge the truths from both sides and to share the real truth, which is deeper, more comprehensive, and compelling. One way to understand the influence is through the framework of System 1 and 2 thinking, which I'm sure like many of you have heard before. Just as a quick recap, in his book Thinking Fast and Slow, Daniel Kahneman talks about two systems that influence decision-making. On one hand, there is a fast, intuitive System 1 that generates impressions, feelings, judgments at a non-conscious level. This system mostly relies on rules of thumb. On the other hand, the slow, deliberate System 2, which is used for problem solving and decision making, that happens more on a conscious level. It tends to be more logical and rational. Coming back to Unspoken. So Unspoken is a fun, intuitive swiping exercise where individuals categorize items by just swiping left or right. These are quick decisions made that allows the individual to rely more on System 1 processes, as well as we know that individual evaluations trigger more of an emotional response. As such, it provides a great way to see what breaks through the clutter. Here, a short video that shows you a short demo on how Unspoken works. So as you can see, people can just easily swipe to the left or to the right, depending on if they like the stimuli. And the stimuli can be basically everything. Here you see some ads. But coming back to our study, what we did in our case study, we basically asked respondents to swipe or left if they like or dislike an advertisement. So what we did is we created ads ourselves for like different brands such as AT&T or Vodafone, but also Google. And this might sound really simple now, but actually this methodology combines really this rational element by taking into account the swipe direction and the emotional element of counting the swipe speed. Something else good to know about the study, I think, is we conducted the study in 2 markets, in the UK and in the US, and we also targeted millennials and non-millennials to actually find out if there are any differences. But I will stop now with talking about our methodology, and in the next few minutes, Nijat will share with you our actual project findings. And honestly, as much as we want to think that we're different, in reality, we all want much of the same.
Exactly. So the truth is, we all want unlimited connectedness in terms of unlimited data and minutes, reliable network, and data security. So everyone from the 18-year-old high schooler ready to take on the world and explore every corner of it, to the 65-year-old granddad chilling in his sunny retirement home that wants to follow every single step of his grandchildren, wants unlimited connectivity. Of course, we found differences in our results that are quite interesting, and here's where brands can tackle segments per generations and catch customers' attention. So the first output that we found is millennials care more about being connected via streaming or having a fun brand as a provider, or finally not missing out on the latest things. Secondly, millennials as well are very open to disruptors. Don't get us wrong, we're brand loyal, but we're more open to brands that bring new propositions to the market, like for example Google. And what we mean by calling Google a disruptor is that officially Google is not a mobile provider. However, by providing Google voice calls or video calls, Google does disrupt the market. And what we see with non-millennials, they're brand loyal as well, but they're more in favor of the current leading brands than millennials. Finally, we want to talk to you about visualization. To give you a better idea, we have tested ads with different visualization steps, starting from just text to ads depicting people, and ultimately with pictures visualizing the text. So the more visual the ad, the more compelling it is to millennials. Also, more visual works better in general, but non-millennials do not have a homogeneous pattern when it comes to visual preferences. So sometimes they prefer just text, while millennials tend to prefer more visual ads with images or icons that complement this text. When it comes to the research methodology, we also saw that innovative research approaches can lead to a higher respondent engagement. Important to note here is that this doesn't hold true not only for millennials, but also for other older generations. So now that you have heard our story, if there is anything that we would like you to take away with you today on what we have learned about our generation, it would be these 4 key things. So firstly, don't forget about the basics. Even though so many new things are coming up, and at points the market seems to be changing wildly, the basic need remains the same: unlimited data plus minutes. But that's not only in the telecom industry. We see tendency to have basic needs in other industries as well. Second, millennials are more open to other brands. This doesn't mean that we're flaky, we just embrace change more easily. It is similar to how in recruiting, the challenge is that millennials job hunt more. As a bigger established brand, this presents quite a challenge. We also learned that there are implications on how to communicate your brand message. Use strong, compelling visuals. Translating your message into something visual works very well, as the message is much more clear for consumers. Last but not least, thinking about our own industry as well. Respondents want to be engaged. There is so much information out there today, and we as consumers do not have time to waste on boring things. We have about 3 seconds to catch people's attention. So not only brands have to be on top of their game, us as researchers have to be aware of these changes and embrace them. Using more intuitive methodologies are the way forward to ensure that we're able to get valuable insights on consumer behavior and decision-making processes. And this is true for millennials and non-millennials. Well, this was it about our case study. And if you would like to test our Unspoken methodology, just scan the QR code on the screen or just type the URL on your mobile phone. So now back to our host.